Good morning to all the students.
Good morning, ma'am.
Let me know if you can see the screen. You're able to see the screen? Presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, welcome to you all to this introductory lecture under Module 5.
Yes, ma'am.
In the previous chapter, we have seen how to understand about HDFS cluster architecture and how HDFS client can perform read and write operations with the HDFS cluster. Now, in this chapter, we are going to focus more on how MapReduce jobs are performed. As we know, MapReduce is another critical component of Hadoop along with HDFS, that is Hadoop Distributed File System. Now, this MapReduce is a programming model for data processing, and Hadoop can run MapReduce programs written in various languages. Means you can write MapReduce programs in various languages like Java, Ruby, Python, C++. You can create this map and reduce jobs separately in different languages, right? And map reduce programs are inherently parallel. It is like it is not that it runs on only a single thread. They are inherently parallel. Means if if a organization has some access to multiple machines, then it supports parallel processing. It is inherently parallel. Now, in order to have a quick understanding about MapReduce and then dwell in depth, let us see the famous example of word count. Now, if a text file is given to this MapReduce, how exactly it conquers that problem? How it counts the number of words in that text file? That let me explain you now. See in this, 1 second, I'll try to point this. Now in this, let us assume the text file contains this data. Welcome to Hadoop class. Hadoop is good, Hadoop is bad, right? Now initially some input splits are made, means the data is divided into chunks and each chunk is given to a map, program, right? So how the splitting is done? The input splits are done according to, say, some number of words or line in this case. Here we have done the input splits like welcome to Hadoop, class Hadoop is, good Hadoop is, and here the last one is the line which contains bad. Right now, these input splits or chunks of data, also called as work units, are assigned to map jobs, where the map jobs here are counting the occurrence of each word. In this first input split, welcome occurs for one time, to occurs for one time, and Hadoop occurs for one time. In the same way, the other input splits are also processed and the number of words are counted here. You can see the number of words counted. The word and its number of occurrence frequency, that is given in mapping stage, right? Now, after this mapping stage, shuffling happens where the same type of words are brought into one particular component. In this case, bad and its occurrence, and class and its occurrence, here good and its occurrence. See here, you can find it out clearly. Hadoop occurs for 3 times. One in this case, one in this case, and one in this case, right? So all those 3 occurrences are consolidated and put into a specific component here. Now again, ease occurs for 2 times and their occurrences are presented here. Again, 2 occurs for one time and welcome occurs for one time. Now, with respect to this shuffling, all these words are brought together In the sense, same type of words are brought together, right? And this is passed as input. This key value pairs are passed as input to the reducer phase. In this reducer phase, this implements some program in order to count the actual occurrences. So the bad occurs for one time, class, good, all these occurs for one time, and Hadoop here occurs for 3 times, right? So the output, which is in key value pair in the previous stage, is reduced by the reduce stage to one consolidated output, right? So Hadoop occurs for 3 times here, and remaining words occur for one time. The frequency is 1. Now, all these reducer outputs are consolidated at the final stage in order to give a final output. In this case, all these are consolidated from various reduced tasks, so that bad, class, good, Hadoop, is, to, and welcome. All these are consolidated and presented as an aggregated result, right? That is how MapReduce works. Initially, the text file or any log file or any type of file is divided into work units or chunks and handed over to map stage, which performs some task in order to change the data into key value pairs, and accordingly some shuffling happens in the next stage before giving it to function. Now this reduce function performs a final counting in this case, and at the ending it consolidates all the data to summarize the result. That is what happens in this word count. Now let us see how a weather data set is analyzed. Are you able to see my screen? I got some sound. Students, you are able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, fine. Now let us see how a weather data set is analyzed. Let's see how this MapReduce mines weather data. Remember, the weather data will be in semi-structured and record-oriented format. Let me show you the data that is acquired from National Climatic Data Center. I'm just stopping to share this screen and show you other screen. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now I want to just explain you how the format of a National Climatic Data Center's records look like. The data what we are going to use in order to analyze the weather data set, I'll explain you about the format now. The data is actually stored using a line-oriented ASCII format. It is not stored as a structured data in the form of rows and columns. Because various sensors are deployed across the globe in order to study the climatic conditions in that particular geographical location, the data is captured in the form of log files. The data is stored using a line-oriented ASCII format in which each line will be a record. And the format supports a rich set of meteorological elements like humidity, precipitation, temperature, wind speed, all this kind of meteorological elements will be captured. The data will be captured, many of which are optional and with variable data lengths. We don't have a fixed data length for this. We have variable data lengths for all these kinds of elements, data that is being captured. Now for simplicity, let us focus only on the basic elements such as temperature, which are always present and are of fixed width, right? So let me explain you in this case. This shows a sample line with some of the salient fields highlighted. So the line has been split into multiple lines in this case to explain you more better, to show each field. So in the real life, fields are actually packed into one line with no delimiters. Means you don't have any identification marks like comma, full stop, colon, hyphen. No such delimiters are present in the actual data. But here they have divided the data into multiple lines in order to show each field and get your feel of how actually this data is being analyzed, right? Now, see the format of a National Climate Data Center record here. In this case, you can see my mouse moving here.
No, ma'am.
Ma'am, can you zoom it a little bit, ma'am? It's not clearly, ma'am. It's not clearly visible.
Yeah. Now?
Yes, ma'am, now it's visible.
Okay, so in this case, the first line, see the comment USAF weather station identifier. So this initial number, this indicates the weather stations identifier, US Air Force stations identifier. Means this sensor is deployed at the US Air Force station, and that sensor is identified by the number 332130. Okay, and the next line is another identifier which is deployed at Weather Bureau of Air Force and Navy, right? So this number 99999 indicates the weather station identifier where that particular sensor is deployed. Now see the next one, observation date and observation time are also captured. In this observation date, you have the year in the first case, 1950, and it is captured on January 1st. Okay, and the observation time is 3 o'clock. Here it is not very clear whether it is AM or PM. Maybe in the actual record, there might be some indication which says that it is captured at AM or PM. Okay, next line, latitude and longitude locations are given where that sensor is deployed, and the elevation where that sensor is deployed, at what height that sensor is deployed, and the wind direction where that sensor is deployed, and the quality code of that measurement. If the quality code is 1, that indicates that the data is captured properly without any errors. But if the quality code is something else, then it indicates that that particular data is erroneously captured. Okay, that is what is indicated by this quality code. And sky ceiling height. The sky ceiling height indicates the height from the ground level or the sea level to the lowest part of the cloud spread in half of the sky. Right, that is given by sky ceiling height in meters and its quality code, the quality of the data captured, and visibility distance. What is the visibility distance when that data is captured? Means how far the image can be seen, the objects can be seen clearly without any means without any obscurity in the visibility, right? So that is given by visibility distance and along with its quality code, and air temperature, its quality code, dew point temperature, its quality code, at what temperature dew starts forming, right? That is dew point temperature, and atmospheric pressure, which actually indicates the signal to whether it may rain or not. Okay, so that is also captured, atmospheric pressure and its quality code. Now, all these data files by date, all these data files are organized by date and weather station. Okay, so on which date they are captured and what weather station they are captured. We know we would be able to understand at which weather station the data is captured by just seeing the weather station identifier as I indicated in the first case. Now there is a directory for each year from 1901 to 2001. In this case, 100 years data is captured in the form of log files, and each containing a zipped file for each weather station with its readings for that particular year. So for example, here are the first entries for 1990, year 1990. See, when you ask to list the data, the first 10 records, it represents 1990s data, record, 10th record of 1990s data and 14th record of 1990s data, which contains data captured across all the weather stations in that particular year. Okay, that is how this data is captured and stored in the form of log files. Remember, each is containing a zipped file for each weather station. For one weather station across that particular year, the entire data is captured and stored in a zip file. Yeah, I think I mistakenly told it as across the globe. No, it is for a single weather station. It is for a single weather station across the year. All the data is captured and stored in a zip file, right? So that is represented by .gz. That is the zip file for that particular year for a weather station. Okay. Now, since there are tens of thousands of weather stations, the whole data set is actually made up of large number of relatively small files. Now, let me change my screen to presentation back. Are you able to see the presentation now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, now I have explained you how the National Climatic Data Center's data captured from weather stations, from sensors deployed at weather stations across the globe, how it is captured into a log file, and all one weather station's data across the year captured into a zipped file and given. That we have seen the format, how actually it looks like. Since there are tens of thousands of weather stations, the whole data set is made up of a large number of relatively small files, right? But it is generally easier and more efficient to process a small number of relatively large files. It actually takes more time to process large number of relatively small files. That is why we need to change the data into smaller number of relatively large files so that we can easily process the data by assigning them to various map and reduce jobs. In this case, the data was pre-processed so that each year's readings were concatenated into a single file. So how when the data is pre-processed, they have changed that each year's recordings were available and concatenated into a single file, right? So one file has one entire year's data across all the weather stations. Now, what is the question that needs to be answered by this MapReduce job? What is the highest recorded global temperature for each year in the data set? Now, let us see how we can conquer this problem without using Hadoop. Let's see how we can analyze this data using Unix tools. Now, the classic tool for processing line-oriented data is AWK. This is a tool which is actually used for processing line-oriented data. This AWK program is, this name is drawn from initials of the developers, 3 developers. I don't remember their names, but their names start with A, W, and K. That is why this name has been given to that particular program. Now, this is a classic tool for processing line-oriented data. Now, if we write a script, the script loops through the compressed year files. We know that all the weather station data for a particular year is put into a file, right? So if we write a script, the script loops through the compressed year files, first printing the year and then processing each file using this AWK command. Now the AWK script extracts two fields from the data. For our comfortability, let us think that we are working on only on two fields of data, that is on air temperature and quality code. Now this AWK script extracts two fields from the data, the air temperature and the quality code, and applies various tests also. Tests like whether the air temperature data is missing, which is indicated by 9999 in this case. If the data is captured, if the temperature is captured, it is indicated in the form of Celsius, say 50 degrees or 150 degrees or minus 20 degrees. But if the data is not captured, if the data is missing, then it is indicated by 9999. Okay, and the quality code also helps us to understand the quality of the data captured, or whether there is any error in the data, or whether there is any corrupted data that has been captured. That can be understood by the quality code, and all this testing can be done by the AWK script. Now to find the maximum temperature for each file and then the complete run for the entire century, that is from 1901 to 2001, it will take 42 minutes in one run on a single EC2 high CPU extra large instance. This is Elastic Compute Cloud. So if this data is run on a cloud, that too Elastic Compute Cloud, on a high CPU extra large instance, still it takes 42 minutes. We have to wait 42 minutes in order to get the result of what is the highest recorded global temperature for each year in the data set, right? So this takes a long time to run by using this Unix tool. And to speed up the processing, we need to run parts of the program in parallel. If we want to run it as a single thread, it takes too much time. So if we need to run the parts of the program in parallel in order to speed up the process, still let us see what kind of problems will be encountered. We could process different years in different processes using all the available hardware threads on a machine. Let us engage all the threads available on a machine with the processing. But still there are few problems with this kind of parallel processing. What type of problems we encounter? First, dividing the work into equal size pieces isn't always easy or obvious. Why? Because the data from one weather station can be of some length and the data taken from other weather station can be of a longer length or a shorter length. Means the records or the files that we are trying to analyze are of variable lengths. One file may be very long and one file may be short. In that case, the entire processing will be delayed by the longest file, because some shorter files can complete their processing, but still the longer files will keep the machine engaged, because they have to run a large amount of data due to its length of the file. Right? In this case, one alternative is to divide the file into fixed size of chunks, and each chunk can be given to a process. In that case, they can be analyzed at equal amount of time. Then what is the second problem we may encounter? Combining the results from independent processes may need further processing. Say when you're dividing the data into fixed size chunks, the data of 1 year, the weather station data of 1 year will be distributed across various machines. Now for each particular chunk, you will get the data, or you will get the temperature highest for that particular chunk, not for the particular year. For that work unit, what is the highest temperature you get? Now, you gather such data from all the work units and try to sort them in order to get the highest temperature for a particular year. So combining the results from independent process may need again further processing. And thirdly, you are still limited by the processing capacity of a single machine. Means you say you are trying to add multiple cores to the machine in order to increase its processing power, then say you're achieving a time efficiency of 20 minutes, that's it. You can't scale it further, right? If multiple machines are used, again, some other problems like coordination and reliability problems arise. Say if there are multiple machines, distributing the work across the machines and coordinating whether the tasks are being completed without any interruptions, and whether the interruption of one particular unit is known to the client. Otherwise, it is that interruption is lying underneath, and the results are provided, which may be sometimes unreliable. All these problems we may come across if we are using multiple machines. So this coordination and reliability problems will arise. So, and also who runs the overall job? Who will take care of the entire job of this processing if there are multiple machines? Who is responsible? Which particular component is responsible in this case? Or which component is accountable in order to overcome any system failures or machine failures, or working on corrupted data? So who runs this overall job, and how do we feel with failed process if at all some system failure or disk failure happens? How it is handled? How resilience to such kind of failures can be achieved? In this case, in order to overcome all these problems, using a framework like Hadoop is need of the hour. In order to take care of these issues, this would be a framework like Hadoop would be a great help to us in order to take care of the issues mentioned in this case. Now, MapReduce, how it is used for analysis. MapReduce works by breaking the processing into two phases, right? The entire processing task is broken into two phases, the map phase and the reduce phase. Now, each phase has key value pairs as input and output. It doesn't work on the data as it is. Remember, MapReduce can work more better with semi-structured and unstructured data. But they can't be conquered as it is. The problem can be solved or processed as it is. The data can be processed as it is. Each phase has key value pairs as input and output. The data will be transformed into key value pairs in order to make this map and reduce jobs work on it. So each phase has key value pairs as input and output, and the types of which may be chosen by the programmer. You can choose the types of those key value pairs. Whether you are working on numerical data or whether you're working on categorical data, that can be chosen by the programmer. Now, the programmer also specifies two functions, the map function and the reduce function. Programmer has to write two functions in any programming language he is comfortable with, like C, C++, Ruby, Python. He can select anything. Or Java, predominantly Java is being used for writing this map and reduce functions. Now, the programmer now specifies two functions in order to process the data. One is the map function and the other one is the reduce function. Now, the input to our map phase is the raw NCDC data. I explained you the structure of the NCDC data, that is National Climatic Data Centers data, which contains various meteorological elements. But at present, we are focusing only on the temperature and trying to answer the question, what is the largest global temperature recorded in a particular year? Okay, so our map function here is very simple. We just pull out the data, we just pull out the year and the air temperature, because these are the only fields right now we are going to focus on. Now, the map function is just a data preparation phase, setting up the data in such a way that the reducer function can do its work on it. Means the map function is making the data ready in the form of key value pairs, so that the reduce function can easily work on various such key value pairs and give us a consolidated result. Fine. So here, the map function is just a data preparation phase, setting up the data in such a way that the reducer function can do its work on it. That is finding the maximum temperature for each year. That is our final question that we need the MapReduce to answer. Okay, so the map function is also a good place to draw bad records. Means this map function also acts like a filtering stage where you can remove missing data or erroneously captured data because it may deviate our final result. So we can try to check the quality code in this case and drop all the erroneous or bad records where the data is not properly captured. Now, to visualize the way the map works, consider the following sample lines of input data. See, the data looks like this. Do not get panicked, you need not. Just it is for your understanding sake how different types of data formats you come across while working with this MapReduce jobs. Okay, now this would be the sample lines of input from this NCDC data, and these lines are presented to the map function as key value pairs. So how would we present it in the key value pairs? See, in this case, the key is 0 and the value is this entire record, right? So this key is nothing but the offset of that particular line in that file. This first record is starting at line 0 and this second record is starting at line at offset 106 and this third record is starting at the offset 212. Offset is nothing but the occurrence of this particular record from the beginning of the file. Okay. So in this case, the first record's offset is 0. As we know, the first record starts from the 0th position, 0th file pointer location, and then 106, and then 212, and so on. Now, I highlighted here the year the data. This record belongs to the data captured in 1950. And this record belongs to the data captured in 1949. Okay, this part indicates the temperature recorded in that particular year by using that sensor deployed at a weather station. This is the temperature captured in year 1950. This is the temperature captured in year 1950 again. Notice this here, the symbol is minus, indicating the drop in the temperature. It is in negative degree Celsius. Here it is in 1 degree Celsius. Here it is in minus 111 degrees Celsius. Here it is too high temperature. Here also it is very high, right? So you need to have domain knowledge in order to understand how exactly the data is captured by the weather stations. Now the keys are the line offsets, as I said, within the file, and which we ignore in our map function. That need not be actually taken considered for the analysis. So let us ignore it because offset doesn't play any role. Our main focus is on year and the temperature captured in that particular year. So the map function merely extracts the year and the A temperature and emits them as its output. So what will be the output of map function? The input to a map function is a key value pair, that is the offset and the record, and the output of the map function is also a key value pair which will be actually utilized by the reduce function. But this key value pair here is more developed now, more refined now. It is not in the crude form like we saw here. This is in a complete crude form. The key value pairs are in a crude form which we are supplying to the map function. But map function further gives us the output in a refined state which will give us the data of the temperature captured in that particular year 1950. 0 degrees, 22 degrees and minus 11 degrees are captured in 1950. So I think last two terms are important here in this case, minus 11 degrees. Other part may indicate some other data. Okay, so in this case, in 1950, temperatures captured are 1, 21, and minus 11. And in 1949, the temperature captured are plus 11 and plus 81. And some more, 1 second. This part is taken, right? So in 1950, we have 0, 22 and minus 11 values. And in 1949, we have 111 and 78 as the temperature that is captured. Right? Now the output from the map function is processed by the map reduce framework before being sent to the reduce function. So this output of map function is further processed by the map reduce framework before giving it as input to the reduce function. Now this processing sorts and groups the key value pairs by key, means with respect to key they are sorted. Okay, so the continuing exam, in this case, in this example, our reduce function sees the following input. So what would be further, what would be the data that is further processed and given to the reduce phase? In this case, all the 1949 data is consolidated as one key value pair, and all 1950 data is consolidated as another key value pair. This is done by the map reduce framework, right? So the output from the map function is not as it is given to reduce function, but it is further processed by the map reduce framework. And this processing actually sorts and groups the key value pairs by key based on the key. Here are the key is the year in which the data is captured, and the value is the list of all the temperatures captured in that particular year. For our simple example, we have taken 2 values captured from 1949 and 3 values captured from 1950. But still our question is not answered. It is going to be answered by the reduce function. So all the reduce function has to do now is to iterate through the list, go through the list and pick up the maximum reading. So how it actually works? It comes across 111 and marks it as the maximum temperature. Then it compares that maximum temperature with the next value. If that is the maximum temperature, that new temperature will be modified. Otherwise, the old temperature itself will remain as the maximum temperature. It happens in this case also. It is something like finding the maximum element in an array. That logic is applied here also. So applying that logic, in 1949, the highest temperature recorded is 111, and in 1950, the highest temperature recorded is 22. Remember, this is according to what records we analyzed, but it is not the entire scenario that is being presented. So do not think that 22 is the maximum temperature recorded across the globe in 1950. Okay, it is the chunk of data what we actually considered. In that, 22 is the highest temperature recorded in 1950, and 111 is the highest temperature recorded in 1949. Right now, this whole data flow is illustrated using this figure. Initially, the data is divided into key value pairs, which will be supplied to the map function, and this map function will shuffle the data and sort such that each year's data is consolidated separately. Now, this is further passed on to the reduce function, which actually locates what is the highest temperature recorded in that particular year, and that will be consolidated as the final result and given as output of this map reduce stage. This is the entire logical data flow in a map reduce program. Now in the forthcoming session, we are going to see how we write these map and reduce functions by using Java programming language. Okay, any doubts in this map reduce? Students, HDFS architecture and the MapReduce framework is very important, not only for your exams, but when you're working in a data center as an architect, or when you are trying to work on some data storage solutions. In that case, you should understand properly about this HDFS architecture and how actually this MapReduce processing is done. So you should not have any doubts with these concepts. Is the concept very clear what is taught today?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, shall we end the class then?
Sure, ma'am.
Okay, we'll see in tomorrow the further concepts of this MapReduce in the second lecture. Bye.